They're easy to see. The difference between a dog and those who are of the true circumcision. And it's like the difference between looking at a wolf and that little lap puppy dog. And we ought to be able to see him, and we ought to respond accordingly. Those who worship by the Spirit of God. John chapter 4, verse 24 says, God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. Those who are of the true circumcision, those who are in covenant relationship with God, they don't need some preacher to twist their arm, manipulate them, guilt them, spank them, beat them into attending some kind of worship service. My goodness gracious, they're in relationship with this loving God, the God of the universe, and they want to worship him. Their life is worship to him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whenever they're aware of his presence, they're worshiping him. That was another thing my old friend who's a newfound philosopher said. Basically, this universe is so huge and we're so tiny little specks. By the way, Stephen Hawking says this too. Hawking, not Hawkins, Stephen Hawking. He says we are so minuscule in this universe so as to be totally insignificant. He's using the immenseness of the universe to try to persuade us that there is no God. You know what it does for me? Just the opposite. This universe is so huge, and every evidence leads to it being created. The Creator's greater than that. That's how big my God is. It's funny how two people look at things from two different directions. Our God is so big. And he's spirit in those who worship him because he deserves our worship. Not so that we can get out of hell free card. I had some friends I used to study, 20 years ago, and they were from a particular denomination, and that's what they thought. I got to go to church, 3 times a week so I can get my get out of hell free card. Oh, you got to be joking me. You're not living because the Spirit of God is in you, and in the awesomeness of this Creator God, his creation, his love, his grace, just makes you fall on your face and want to worship him, then you don't know my God. Paul says you'll know the dogs because they don't know this God. They're not inclined to worship him. They don't have this ever-present desire to worship him, led by his Spirit. Something that's done more than just in the temple. Something that's done more than just performing a rite, such as chewing on some crackers and drinking some grape juice or coming to a building or that kind of thing. Right? They're worshipers, and they're not about rules. I got to tell you another story. There's a friend of mine who was an elder in a church in Oklahoma. And they used to have church on Sunday morning and Sunday night. And so it was Sunday night at this small church in Oklahoma. And a bunch of the guys were standing around out in the parking lot, cowboy boots on and cowboy hats on. A couple of them were having a smoke, And finally it was time. It was 6 o'clock, right at, the scriptural starting time for the Sunday evening service. And I remember this elder recounting this. He said the other elder took his cigarette, put it down, stuffed it down, goes, all right, let's go get this over with. Oh man, think about that. How many people feel that way about worship? Let's just get this over with. Let's punch our card. Let's get done. That's not the way those of the true circumcision believe. Those who are in true covenant relationship with God. It's not about the rules. Even though there are several things that we do to show our worship, like today, the communion, and various singing, clapping, dancing. I mean, we don't dance much here, but we should. I mean, the Spirit of God's here. It's got to be breaking somebody out just wanting to dance. You're just holding back. Because some of you are afraid, man, if I start breaking out and dancing, well then, golly jeepers, somebody's going to say, did you check out Ryan, man? He was dancing. Something like that. Sorry for picking on you twice, Ryan. I got to spread the wealth around. But, I mean, sometimes I just can't help it. I got done with that wedding yesterday, And that was cool. They had some good music, and God, I think it was God, but anyhow, I was just dancing down the aisle. Everybody was. It was great. It's celebration. And worship is a celebration. And you know, David, he danced around in his BVDs. Did you know that? His wife, Michal, became an old biddy because she didn't know about worship. She looked down and saw David. She despised him as he was dancing praise to the Lord. And that's what we're afraid of, isn't it? Come on, let's come clean. We're afraid some Michal is going to be looking down on us and saying, "Ooh, look at you. You trying to show off or something or what?" You know. And we're afraid some Michal is going to be critical of us dancing. And David said, "You're going into a back room. You're going to be barren the rest of your days. But I'll tell you what, I'll even become more undignified before my Lord." Because he's not going to let that stop him. He's a true worshiper of God because he's in true covenant relationship with God. And it stirred him. Does God's Spirit stir you? If it stirs you, don't put that fire out. Let it go. And don't worry about if there's some Michals here. They're old biddies. They're going to be off in the back room. You don't have to worry about them. Don't let them be your driving force. That's not good. All right? So anyhow, people in covenant relationship, they love to worship God. They want to express their love to Him in many and sundry ways. And then he talks about those who glory in Christ Jesus, and I want to talk about that a little bit. By the way, you notice how he pits these things against each other? You know, he talked about those who really worship by the Spirit of God versus those who are dogs. Those who glory in Christ Jesus versus those who do evil. Man, verse 1, let's go back to that again. Finally, brothers, rejoice in the Lord. He's repeating himself. He says it's no problem. I can say this over and over and over again. He says it's for your safeguard. Do you get the point? How many times and how easy it is for us when we look around at things that are going bad, how we can get down in the mouth and into a funk, you know. He says, no, get your eyes back on Jesus. You know, glory in Him. Rejoice in Him. Rejoice in the Lord. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, rejoice. Nehemiah chapter 8 and verse 10 says, "For the joy of the Lord is your strength." It's a safeguard to you. Keep your eyes on Jesus. That's your safeguard. That's your strength. Are you constantly bragging on Jesus? Are you? Are you aware of all that He's done for you and continues to do for you? And do you brag on Him? Dogs, they constantly brag about their own accomplishments and what they have done. You know, we've got this, we're circumcised. We observe these holy days. I fast 3 times a week. I give 1/10 of all I give. Blah, 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 blah. All about themselves. And those of us who are of the true circumcision say, I'm not worth anything. It's all about Him. It's all about what He has done. And the sister passage to this is the same but a little bit different. Because he says they don't put any confidence in the flesh. Paul uses that word sarx. And I challenge all of you to go and Google that word. Sarx. S-A-R-X. Definition. Learn about it. It is a purposely ambiguous kind of word. Because it covers so many different ideas. But the basic idea of not putting confidence in the sarx, the flesh, is I don't put any confidence in myself. I don't put any confidence in the things of this world. Okay? We don't have circumcision controversy today. At least I don't think so. Anybody worried about that today? Huh? No, I don't think so. I don't think it's a big thing in churches or otherwise. But we do have this continued struggle of the flesh. Putting confidence in ourselves, our own abilities. Putting confidence in the outward, the physical, the things of the world. Money, health, intellect, material goods, human accomplishments, things that we have done. And Paul says, we don't do that. We who are a part of the true covenant, the true circumcision. And Paul, by the way, in verses 4 through 6, he begins to roll out his own resume. And I'll talk about this more next week. But man, I'm telling you what, Paul had it made according to the world. And he says, that's worthless. By the way, he uses a much stronger word. And I'll use that word next week. And those of you who are a little skittish, you know, hide your children and stuff. But it's in the Bible. It's a Bible word, and we're going to use it next week. All right? And that's what he calls his resume compared to Jesus Christ. He says, trust in God.